hear me in the back there? All right, good stuff. Well, Jon, very interesting presentation. You talked about the possibility in the near future, I suppose, of transporting people between cities, to places. How will that work from a communication standpoint? Because we're working on autonomous ground-based vehicles. You have autonomous air-based vehicles. Is there going to be a common communication platform so that those two modes of transportation can communicate with each other and pick up cargo, pick up cars with people in them, move them from here to Traverse City or wherever it might be?
That's a great question, RJ, because naturally one of the most important things when you have a new transportation system is you have to have transportation infrastructure. And that infrastructure, be it communication system. As I was mentioning earlier today, dedicated short-range communication represents a real opportunity for facilitating comms, controls, data delivery, collision avoidance for unmanned aircraft systems in urban environments. What we see is basically a sort of a hybrid, having this DSRC on board, as well as LTE when we get outside of range of ground-based infrastructure. It'll be a combination between LTE and DSRC for comms, data, video, collision avoidance. So essentially, if you have those two communication systems in place, theoretically we can leverage mobile applications to, solicit data services or cargo delivery or passenger transport services.
Maybe talk a little bit more about how drones or unmanned aerial vehicles can be an asset for first responders. Say a large building is under fire. In some cases, the first fire truck will show up and then they'll call another station and it becomes like a 4 or 5 alarm fire, where if they had a drone up in the very beginning, they would know pretty much how many assets to bring to bear and much quicker response to that fire.
Well, RJ, that's a great example, because when I started this, when I sort of pivoted for the first time from mass air mobility to the small unmanned systems, I was very focused on emergency response, supporting firefighters, not necessarily public safety, because drones didn't necessarily have a very good reputation. Folks really felt that drones were, could be abused for people's privacy. So I really took it upon myself to focus on delivering the technology to firefighters. And what's great for firefighters and emergency responders, one use case is search and rescue. I can take an aircraft, upload a series of area waypoints, and cover 300 acres in 45 minutes, leveraging both a color camera or a thermal camera. When you look at the use of UAVs in the context of a multi-alarm fire, having that asset in the air to share situation awareness with responders on the ground, it helps evaluate ingress and egress points, where the hot spots are in the fire, so that when we have firefighters heading up onto the roof of those buildings to ventilate those buildings so we can help put those fires out, we don't put firefighters' lives at risk by having them climb on these roofs where there's a weak hot spot beneath it, but they can't see it with the human eye. So we actually use the thermal cameras to show them where the hot spots are, and it helps them put those fires out faster and mitigates risk for those responders.
And how about, there's been a lot of talk about the drones delivering packages to residential homes. And yet people have an expectation that they own the air rights above their home. How will those packages get to those specific homes in that kind of environment?
Well, that is a scenario whereby it's going to be very situational. Number one, is that particular customer have an opening whereby we could physically deliver an air vehicle and deliver a package. I don't believe in flying over people's homes without their permission. I believe in using the rights of ways of the ground-based transportation systems, which sort of connect to our connected infrastructure. So therefore, we will know in advance, number one, where we can and cannot deliver an air vehicle safely, because it's been scouted out in advance. But I believe connected vehicle infrastructure is going to be critical in order to facilitate that level of delivery. But it's not going to be a situation that works for everyone, obviously.
Sure. So basically, people have an expectation that they own the air rights above their home, but the street in front of them, that's a public street, and that's where those drones are going to fly to get to that home or that business. And lastly, if we could talk about cargo. That industry is, if you will, the early adopter of this technology. Where is that all going? I mean, are these aircraft going to be large enough that they can pick up that standardized large cargo container that's coming in on ships or rail, deliver them at night? FedEx, and they're based out of the Kentucky market, flying these drones at night to supply things that are needed in Memphis or Kansas City or in Detroit. How is that going to play out?
So all aircraft are designed based on their mission objectives. So we start with, what's the job? What job do we have to do? So if the job is we're going to deliver someone's package from Amazon, okay, we don't necessarily need a larger aircraft system to accomplish that job, because typically most of their packages fall under 5 kilograms. So therefore, there'll be a whole array of different air vehicles to perform different jobs. Very much like on the ground, we have a whole fleet and of categories of ground vehicles to perform different jobs. So drones will very much operate in the very same way. So whether you're operating within an urban environment and it's carrying an Amazon package, or it's operating between cities, carrying much larger capacities of cargo. It really boils down to making sure that the infrastructure is in place to facilitate the safe and efficient routing of air vehicles so that they don't have collisions with critical infrastructure or each other. And then it's essentially going to be an airborne highway where a variety of shapes and sizes will be moving things, whether it's a camera or a package or a person. So the drone size is really going to be dictated by the mission, but really before we can get to a mature environment where we see that, we're going to need to build our highways. So.
Well, great. Well, John, I wanted to thank you for coming on behalf of TiECON Midwest Global.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Wonderful presentation.
Oh, thanks.